Someone asked me to make a waterfall painting, so this is an A3 card painted with the iron and the stylus. I've turned the A3 cards so that I can draw the iron or drag the iron towards myself and away from myself once I've loaded it up with the waxes. These are the Encaustic Art waxes, and the first load just spread upwards and downwards, 3 light strokes, and then reloading with exactly the same colourway. Merging those 2 loads together and trying to find a sky that is attractive, is light, is pretty enough for the picture that I want to paint. So I'm putting on some clear white, pink, yellow, blue, and this time just very lightly touching the iron down to create a bit of texture there. Still a little bit of a gap at the top corner, so pull that back, there we are, covered now. And then using a hot air gun on quite a low temperature, just hot enough to melt the wax and allow it to move slightly. And this has the effect of softening the colours together. You can see it moving there very gently. So it sort of blends the hard lines that you might get from the spread of the iron into a softer, more joined up sky, a more uniform sky. Now I want to create some distant hills, so I'm using white and a little bit of blue and green. And just the top part of the iron there to push that colour into a shape form of horizon that I like. They're soft colours because these are distant hills. A bit more colour. Blend it in. Can you see the card is sticking to the iron as I go? I've got a little bit of hair in there, so take that out and then go over it again. And it actually gives a nicer distance. Now I want to put a bit of stronger colour in, and I'm going to make some trees by dabbing. This dabbing effect is going to represent trees and foliage in the middle ground and sort of moss and so on in the foreground, little bushes. A bit of green and brown, that's the olive green, and the yellow brown, number 14. And this is my middle ground landscape area. And you can see that by making it a bit darker it feels closer already. It's a lot more difficult on a big card to get your hand behind in exactly the right place for the dabbing effects. Some stronger colour in the middle there. Just dabbing gently, fingers behind to support the card. And now an impression of water, a pool in the middle. I want to put a little bit of the sky colour in, some pinky blue. I'm not too worried about the colour because I'll deal with that later on. I think that'll do for the water, and then just blocking in a sort of end to that water. And then underneath, so it's now contained within a space. I've got my pool or my lake in the middle. And again, it's quite difficult to get your fingers behind the card in order to dab without getting the edge marks from the iron. Well, so far so good. One little mark there, just rub it out with my finger while it's warm and smudge it in. Now I'm going to do the waterfall. So I'm using clear wax, and I'm actually using a bit of paraffin wax and beeswax mixed together. You can try different clear waxes. I like this one because it's a little bit more syrupy, a little bit thicker than the regular block that I use. and then lightly just dragging down. So that top edge of the iron is the top of the waterfall. You can see the little picture in the top corner there to give you another perspective of the same operation. Put it down, drag it down, and of course you can keep on doing this until you get an effect that you like. Don't let it go on for too long, because if it goes on for too long you can lose the texture, and what I want to do is create texture in that water and yet keep it nice and light. So I've added a little bit more colour in this time. And I'm going to accept that one. So here's the side of my waterfall. I need to contain it. So first of all along and then down. And of course the same thing for this side. Give the waterfall a place to fall. I noticed a couple of little splashes and spots in the upper areas here, so I'm just getting rid of those while I remember. I don't want to get to having finished the painting and then realise that I didn't clean it up properly. It pays to clean up because people notice any little mistake. Now I'm making a point of tissue because I want to join the lake or the pool to the waterfall. And I'm going to do that by rubbing away the wax. So first of all gently, and then pressing harder, rubbing in horizontal parallel strokes to get rid of some of that wax. Quite hard at the end. I don't want to take it all off, I want to leave a little bit there. And now I'm cleaning the edge of the block up so that I can lightly crayon into that freshly rubbed area. And then smudge it with my finger so that it has the same colour density as the pool itself. And in that pool or lake, I'm now adding colour to reflect the sky colours. Same thing with a bit of green. I just want to change that top edge a little bit. And now the yellow. And this just gives a feeling of reflection of the light of this day, so it makes it feel a little bit more realistic. A little bit of white, just to dull it down a little bit, make it a little bit more misty and pastel. And now some strong colours, and you can see the different densities of colour. So where it's very strong, as I've just put on, it feels very close, and farther away it's a more misty thing. Now I touched inside the waterfall with the edge of the iron, you can see it there, so I'm going to have to fix that. I don't want to go and redo the waterfall again, so what I'm going to do is take the edge of the iron and put a little feature there. So run the edge through the wax block and then make some little grasses to overpaint that bit that I made a mistake on. And it's only a mistake if I see it as that. It can always be fixed, you can always change what you're doing. Time to block in a bit more. Just roughly put the main colourway there so I can see what I'm trying to do. And now we're back to that, trying to hold the card and dab on detailing. And when it's a big card it can be quite difficult. But I'm using the colours in darker versions that are already in the sky. So I'm using a darker version of pink. And now I'm going to lift up the card and put it on what's actually a starter set box with a couple of packs of card on top. So now I can get my hand underneath without actually having to lift the card. I'm just touching my fingers behind where the iron is. And this is a much easier way of working this detailing on bigger cards. Putting on my sky colours again, but in darker versions, remember. And I've just touched into the waterfall again with the iron, you can see it there in the background. But it doesn't matter because I'm going to overpaint that in a minute. Turn the iron down just a little bit. And then using my fingertips right behind the card. And I'm happy with that. Get them out the way. And now I'm going to make the waterfall run away as a stream from the bottom to that, what's now the top corner. So put the iron down, lightly pull it all that way along. The wax is quite slippery and wet at the moment, so I'm wiping it on a tissue in between each iron stroke, waiting for the moment when it creates texture, and there it is. So that's the one I'm going to keep. Now I can work underneath the water, so fingers, don't need it on the box this time because I can get my fingers under there quite easily. And again, I'm using those dark versions of the sky colours, yellow-brown, the red-violet, the blue and the green. And you can see how strong those colours are in that bottom corner to really hold the water in. And I thought I'd touch this a little bit up because I wasn't very happy with that with the stylus, but in the end I decided to use the iron and put some darker colour along that far edge of what is now the stream. And then flick it up with the top edge of the iron. That spreads the colour out a little bit. And then use the curved edge of the iron to create little lines for grasses. This is a Stylus Pro with the drawing tip in it. I'm just using the drawing tip in this stylus all the way through. And I'm just putting in some middle ground fence posts. Very simple idea, but it helps with the perspective and the distance that we're trying to create. And then dotting off with the very tip of that drawing tip to create some little distant flower patches. I'm using the pinks here, again to reflect the sky colours, and all my flowers are going to be either pink, blue or white. Now, working into the wax that already exists, using the curved edge of the iron, just pushing up to make little grasses, and not being afraid to cross over horizontal lines. So when you make vertical lines across horizontal lines, it helps the perspective of depth. It shows that the thing you're making is in front of the thing that was already there. You can pick up more wax off the block with the edge of the iron at any point in time. And I'm trying to keep these grasses quite small because they're in our middle distance, the other side of the pool. But now I'm working on a landmass that's closer to us. And so these grasses need to be bigger. Not being afraid of going over the water, of going over my calm and clear areas. Because as I said just now, this increases the feeling and the illusion of depth. At the end of the day, this is just a flat piece of card with some wax on it. So any idea of depth and distance is something that we actually have to create visually by use of colour and appropriate form. Just working backwards and forwards with the iron edge. Speeding up a bit there. Well, you get the idea of how this works. And I'm going to do some here up the side of the waterfall, and that helps again to frame it. You can see that wax is quite dark, and so it stands out in strong contrast against the waterfall itself. And again, not being afraid to cross over those white areas of wax. A little bit of darker colour just for this bottom corner because it's not quite dark enough down there. I just want to make sure that your eye stays inside the picture looking at that waterfall. And finally for the grasses, being brave and cutting across into the sky. Again, this just gives the impression that there's some grass clumps closer by. We don't see where they're rooted, but they're closer to where we are. And now I'm going to do dragonflies, because that was the other thing that was requested for this painting. A waterfall and dragonflies. And I'm doing different sized ones, but I tend to do the bigger ones first. The dragonflies are sort of like a clock face with the hands at 10 to 2. And for the bigger ones, I do more than one stroke, maybe a couple of strokes for each of the wings, so you can see there. It just fattens the wings up and makes them a bit more believable. Keeps everything in scale. And then finding places to hide more so that the silver wax which I'm using gives a little tiny bit of sparkle as you look at it from different angles in the light. Dragonflies are quite playful little creatures, and they sort of bring a lightness and a life to a drawing. So now putting in their bodies, little flicks of the red-violet colour. And I made a mistake here. Look, I put the tail right through the key mountain in the distance. And so that sort of destroys the focus, because you're not sure if you're looking at the mountain or the dragonfly. I've hidden the mountain in the distance with the dragonfly. A little bit of lighter colour into this one, because if I don't do that, you won't see it very well. So you have to do little tricks like that sometimes. So here's my mistake, dragonfly tail right on that mountain top. What can I do to fix that? Well, I'm taking a little bit of colour that I know will make the mountain colour, get a bit more white, and moving the mountain top. So if I move it across a little bit, then I remove that conflict, that visual conflict. So now the dragonfly tail isn't hitting the top of the mountain anymore. So I've got the structure, I just need to decorate it up a bit. So this time, rather than using the point of the drawing tip, I'm using the open slotted edge and just banging that down lightly onto the areas where I want the wax to come out. And again, I'm reflecting sky colours that I've used as a theme in this image to bring colour harmony and sort of credibility to it. Putting some little spots on some of the grasses so they look like flowering plants. And then light blue, darker blue the further down it gets and more in the shade and the closer. Just building up a sort of mix and harmony of these colours to decorate the foreground. Then a bit of white just to highlight it. And a few flowers on the grasses as well. Irises they could be. I want to get rid of that hard line at the bottom of the waterfall. So I've got a little bit of white wax and I'm just merging those things together to lose that hard line and make it feel more like the fluid softness of water falling. And then I'm just filling around, really adding a little bit of detail, a little bit of highlight into the waterfall itself with some white. Just improving little bits that I'm not maybe totally happy about. And then pulling out those little areas that got left in the middle of the rubbed away water, do you remember? And if there's not enough colour, just add a little bit in. Just to help enhance and make the thing more realistic. I had already polished before I did this bit of film, but I'm just showing you that it's time to polish. You can see the shine on it. Remove any final little spots or dots that you don't like. Here I'm just using the stylus tip to mend the colour where I had scraped away earlier on. And that was it. my dragonflies flying around on a nice colourful day in a peaceful pool, playing by the waterfall. And I'm glad to say that the person who asked me to paint it was very happy. It's a nice image to go on a wall. If you're interested in online courses, have a look at encaustichouse.com, and all the products came from encausticart.com. And thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye bye.